Okay. Hi everyone. So this is the second video, and after going through a couple of things to figure out what we should talk about, I decided a good second video would be a day in the life, to give you an idea of what inpatient rehabilitation is like. So here we go. I work at a hospital, and I'm part of the inpatient rehabilitation team, which is someone has a stroke, a heart attack, an amputation, something that results in hospitalization. And after that, they have different options, they have different modes and choices they could make. They could go to an inpatient facility like the facility I'm at. They can go to outpatient facilities, which is kind of like going to the doctor's office. You go in, you get treatment, you leave. They can do home health, where someone actually goes to their house, performs whatever services they need. They could also go to a skilled nursing facility or a nursing home for further therapy, which is a little bit more intense than outpatient or home health at times, or they could choose to not do any of the above. Well, I work at an inpatient, like I said. So the inpatient facility I work at is here in South Texas, and I've been working with that hospital for over 5 years now, and I really enjoy it. Hospitals are something like unicorns, is what I like to say. Jobs don't come up very often for speech pathologists in hospitals, so when they do, if you really want it, you got to keep looking, you got to pursue it, to find a way to get your foot in the door. I personally started with the hospital over 5 years ago, like I said, and I was PRN, which is a contract. They call me when they need me, and we go from there. So that was one way to get my foot in the door, and it ended up paying off because 5 years after that, there was a part-time position that opened. I was able to talk with the director and see what was the likelihood of transitioning to full-time, and figuring those things out and making the best decision that I could, which was to join the team part-time / full-time, and then transitioning to a full-time employee. During this time, over the past year, I've helped to grow our department as a whole and help us to provide better services for our patients and their family members during this transition between having a hospitalization and returning home. The majority of our patients are in the facility for a week or two, and they do return home with family or caregivers, independent if they are able to. And there's a variety of things that we help them with. So some of the patients we would be getting at an inpatient facility would include strokes, heart attacks, cabbages or heart valve replacement kind of things, amputations, debility and deconditioning, which means that they're just weaker than they used to be. What else? Trachs, NPO patients, aphasia patients from strokes, and all sorts of other things. Guillain-Barré was a very interesting one. Patients with Guillain-Barré typically start losing sensation. The first patient I ever worked with Guillain-Barré was at an inpatient facility, the same facility but the different location, and it was very interesting because I had never worked with the patient, to the point where his face was pretty much frozen, as was the rest of his body. He couldn't blink his eyes. When he did try and blink his eyes, they would stay open and his eyes would roll back, so it would look something like this, as opposed to trying to blink your eyes. For him, we're working on a lot of facial expressions and or motor exercises, articulation, as well as dysphagia exercises to help him regain his ability to eat and drink as he was before, as close as possible. It's not always realistic to return to prior level, but our goal is to help them reach their goal, and if they don't reach their goal, to get as close as possible to reaching their goal. So that's a basic summary of the kinds of patients that I've worked with. So in a regular day for me, I'm an early bird. I've always been an early bird. I work best in the mornings. So I'm typically up quite early, about 4 in the morning. And I get ready. I take care of our dogs because we have dogs. Make sure everything's in order. Head out to the office or the hospital. And I get there typically about 15-30 minutes before my actual start time because I like to be prepared. So once I'm actually in the office, I print the census so that I know what patients are in the hospital, who, or on our floor at least, who are new, who left, what their diagnosis is. On the census sheet, it has their name, their diagnosis, their doctor, and basic information, which gives us their room number to give us an idea of who they are. So once I do that, I typically adjust our charge sheet, which is something that we turn in as individuals to document a paper trail of who we worked with, how long we worked with them, and things of that sort. So I make sure that that list is up to date with the right room numbers, the patients, and any pertinent information. After that, I review schedule and see any things that I may need to tweak. Typically, I only tweak for speech since that's my department. And for our department, we will be now up to 3 full-time speech therapists very, very soon, which is exciting. We opened a new facility at the end of June, and starting the facility, I was the only speech pathologist. Over the past couple of months, we've had a PRN working full-time hours, helping with the census, as well as a clinician from our outpatient facility across the street coming over to help us out as well. So we're finally going to have 3 speech language pathologists, which is really great, and we'll be able to help more people. And so I'll adjust the schedule to whatever needs to be done, whether it's modifying speech for swallow studies or caregiver education, or if I know that someone needed a shower because OT said they needed a shower, then I would try and help adjust the schedule if it's not already fixed that way. That way everything's a little bit smoother. So I'll print out the schedule, I'll print out the census, I'll print out our charge sheets. I'll get my schedule in order. That way I know who I have to see and what times and such. Our sessions are 45-minute sessions, and we've constructed to where there's a 15-minute break. So almost every session starts on the hour. We work with the patient for 45 minutes, and we have a 15-minute break to do documentation, or if we run over for caregiver education, running to the restroom, or talking with our peers about what is going on with these patients, how to help them get better faster, and things we can modify, or things that we notice that maybe they need more attention with, things of that sort. So that is a summary of what my morning typically looks like. So if the patient is an evaluation, so example would be today we had an evaluation, 1 minute, dry mouth. So we had an evaluation this morning, looked at the census, looked at the patient, figured out the room number, the diagnosis. From there we do a chart review. So review the hard chart as well as the electronic chart in the system to see who this patient is, why were they hospitalized, how long were they hospitalized, what is their primary diagnosis that they're there for, and what are any other secondary diagnoses that may affect how they're doing. Something that I also look at is if patients have a primary diagnosis of anything cardiac related, since I'm on the cardiac committee for our hospital and we're in the process of working on our certification. I'll figure out if they have a cardiac diagnosis as a primary, and or if they have 2 secondary diagnoses of anything related to cardiac. So it could be AFib and hypertension, it could be history of a CABG, it could be maybe they coded during their hospitalization, maybe they have CAD, coronary artery disease, things like that. So if they do, I'll put them in a binder just that I could follow up with them during their stay. Back to the chart review. So we do the chart review. We figure out who this patient is, what diet are they on, what are the diagnoses, where were they, how long were they there, where do they live, do they live by themselves, do they live with a caregiver, is it an apartment, are they homeless, or is it a house, 2-story, 1-story, things like that. Once we gather all that information, we print out an evaluation and we gather the BIMS form and oral mech supplies, as well as a bedside swallow supply kit. We'll go in and do the evaluation with the patient, starting with the BIMS to figure out what their level of cognitive abilities are. We'll move into our full assessment, which includes receptive, expressive, cognition, memory, problem solving, writing, reading, math, segue to the oral mech and the bedside, depending on who the patient is and how they're doing. During this time with the patient, we're talking to them, we're figuring out who they are as an individual, what are their goals during their stay, and how we can help them. We'll also talk with family and see what is going on. After we do that, we go ahead and write the report. And we actually do 2 reports. It's typically one for the speech and cognitive aspects and one for their bedside swallow assessment. So yeah. My typical day, since I start so early, I'm typically done at inpatient with about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I move on to other things. So that is a basic idea of what I do during the day, at least. There is a lot of conversation between the different clinicians, between the doctors. Doctors are extremely involved at inpatient as opposed to other venues that I've worked at. I talk with nursing all the time, make sure that we're all on the same page, talk with CNAs to make sure that we're providing the best quality of care with the managers, occupational physical therapist, social worker, PPS coordinator, and then at the end of the day, I typically follow up with our business developer or marketer to see who's coming in the next day. But if you have any questions about that, comment, let me know, and I will follow up. Until